for BIM, or for CanBIM, or as they call it, nurturing the value proposition and preparing for scale. I'd really like to thank CanBIM for setting up such a great panel. We've got some really great minds that are taking part today for this hour session. First off, I guess I'll introduce myself just real quick. Chris Hobbs. I'm the founder and president of TTT Studios out in Vancouver, British Columbia. We are just in our lunch hour, where you guys are well beyond that. We make software for clients all over the world, but we've also we have our own internal innovation unit. So we do focus quite a bit on incubation, internal products, especially around AI, facial recognition, all of this. And as well, we've been part of an innovation with the Canadian Trade Accelerators in San Francisco. So I'm really excited to share some of my small knowledge and flavor all of the rest of the individuals here who have some great knowledge. First off, housekeeping. As you can see, we have a chat and QA and polls and handouts. Please, if you have any questions, let's keep it in the Q&A section. Though with the moderation, we will be moving it from chat into Q&A as needed. But if there are any questions that you want to ask our great panels, please feel free. I'm going to have each of the panelists introduce themselves. But first, just quickly, I will say we're really excited to have Lisa Cashmore, Vice President, Start and Scale with Communitech, Ben Liao, Managing Director of Techstars, Sachi, Director, Global Startup Pipeline and Community Relations with DMZ. I hope it's DMZ. You can correct me there. And as well, the wonderful Arash Shahi, CEO of AECO, or AECO Innovation Lab. Ben, introduce us, tell us what your organization does, please.
Let's give that a go. Can you hear me? Awesome. Thanks, everyone, for joining us. It's a pleasure to be here and an honor to be here with fellow panelists. I'm the managing director of the Colliers PropTech Accelerator powered by Techstars. And so this is a sort of joint initiative between two global organizations, one Colliers being a sort of top 5 commercial real estate services firm, operates in 60 plus countries around the world. And Techstars, given the topic, it's actually quite timely because even the word sort of accelerator didn't exist when Techstars first started back in 2006. And so it's the worldwide network that helps entrepreneurs succeed. We deploy seed stage capital in many firms, startups around the world, and we also partner with many leading industry organizations in order to help with their growth and success in industry verticals. So I think we have about 50 programs around the world today, operate in most major markets in the world. And I think about the last time I checked, about 5% of all Series A checks are written into a Techstars company. So we're pretty proud of some of those stats that we've accomplished over the last decade and a half. And that's the quick sort of update on me.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing, Ben. And I think we'd all be, we would be in a closet somewhere or under a rock to not know Techstars. So it's really an honor to have you. So Sachi, please tell us about what you do and your organization.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks everyone for having me today. As Chris mentioned, we're at the DMZ. We're a world-leading tech incubator and accelerator program. We've been operating for over 10 years. It's actually our 10th year anniversary. We're fortunate to have worked with over 400 companies that have collectively raised over 900 million in funding. And we deploy a bunch of services, but mainly around providing programming and resources to our startups, helping them raise their round of financing if that's a need, and really manage all the challenges in building a company. So we're the heart of downtown Toronto, and now given the current climate, we've been working with companies across the country and companies abroad as well. So things haven't slowed down on our end.
Fantastic. Thank you. And DMZ, it's in my nature to say DMZ, but I totally dig it. Yeah. Well, next, Sen just did it. Sorry, Arash, why don't you share again what you do and a little bit about yourself, please?
Sure. Glad to be here. Arash Shahi, I'm the CEO of AECO Innovation Lab. We're a relatively new company. We're a COVID child ourselves. And our area of expertise is basically bringing business, research, and financial resources together in helping digitize the AEC sector. So we are a research-first institution, but we also help with company creation and very early stage startup studio. So.
But you know what? Why don't we start with just the first question that I have, and I think Ben already kind of touched on it a little bit. I'm interested to know, as you said, you have Colliers that helps push, where you're looking for an innovation. But when any of you, how do you engage with industry? And I'll start with Sen. But like, is it a grassroots thing? Are you looking for anything specifically? Does the industry kind of push down, saying this is what we're looking for? Please tell me how it works with your organization.
No, it's a good question. I mean, we work with several large institutions within the DMZ in different ways, and so it comes down to kind of how do we understand the corporate's intentions on what they want to gain out of it, and a lot of times it's just getting more exposure to startups and getting access to the innovation that they're working on, seeing how it can impact them as an organization or their clients or partners. And so we've been fortunate to work with some of the major financial institutions and major enterprises in the country. So one is partnering with our accelerator programs, and I know Ben would have a lot to say on that on the Techstars side of things, but we've done that as well for our accelerator program, our incubator program, and running hackathons.
And thank you for sharing that, Sen. Why don't we do this, Arash? Why don't you share how you engage as a group?
Yeah, for sure. We are built by the industry. So in my previous role at U of T, I was managing a research center there and building innovations. And about a year ago, our industry partners and us got together and created AECO Innovation Lab. So we are built by the industry for the industry. It's been interesting from that perspective. We're trying to support the industry from within. We're trying to encourage entrepreneurship from within our industry network. So the AEC industry basically is what created AECO. We have a partnership with the Residential Construction Council of Ontario, with building officials, with municipalities, and can dig deeper into that to the rest of the conversation. But from our perspective, we are the industry organizations who assemble to help us, all of us, digitize and push forward with innovation.
Wonderful. Well, that's great. And congratulations of forming during these COVID times. I think that's not only brave, but I think it's necessary as new ways, come to pass where we have to communicate and just start creating value, especially where, businesses like Toronto. I know, I'm out in Vancouver again, but I recognize that Toronto is just on fire, and I should say Western Ontario for that matter too. And I look forward to learning from all of you about this. Ben, again, I think you touched a little bit about this, but did you want to continue, your thoughts on how you engage with the industry directly?
Yeah. And so there are a couple different stakeholders we got to think about when we engage with industry. On one hand, there's the startups that we work with and, their specific needs and how they're looking to grow. Secondly, really kind of big stakeholder are all the sort of corporations. When you think about a particular industry, such as real estate, there's, in this particular case, there's colliers that we work with on a global scale. And so we work with all the sort of, all the different stakeholders within that organization, from the top of the C-suite to the regional CEOs, also throughout the entire organization. There are 16,000 plus. And so we identify about 150 or so that have some scope within their existing job description that relates to technology. And we work with all those people around the world. Now, just taking one sort of half step back, because we also operate in many different industries, not only do we identify the needs of colors as an organization, or more broadly, real estate as an industry, and we identify the emerging trends and needs of the industry, because they also work with two different stakeholders, occupiers and landlords, right? And so when they sort of facilitate the transaction, there are those stakeholders to account for as well, and their particular needs. And taking one step back from that, because we also work with every other industry around the world, whether it be sort of IoT, retail, previously with Target, Amazon Alexa, natural language voice processing, there are the emerging technologies that we have a lens towards that are sort of around the corner. And many of those companies are starting to apply their technology within the real estate industry, which becomes very, very interesting. And so we have that sort of horizontal play that gives us a lens into the future, so to speak, with where they apply their technology to other industries. And given that real estate is the largest opportunity in the world, it makes it very interesting for players that we interact with within our network of partners.
Fantastic. Well, it's exciting stuff. And just talk about Techstars itself then. how big? So you'd be, I guess, a business unit within Techstars would be a way of saying it, or an industry unit within Techstars?
Yeah. So what was interesting was, I mean, the idea just came. We still have this sort of email hung on the door of one of our founders that just began as an idea, just like every other company out there back in 2006. And so the idea was literally, hey, let's bring in 10 companies. Let's give them some access to capital. Very, very importantly, let's give them access to mentors, those that have built companies, found success. And that group, and given just like, the margin of error in building a startup company, I think many people kind of know just how difficult it is to get a company off the ground. Let's bring those experts to be able to help those companies, avoid those mistakes along the way. And so that's how it began. About 100 or so mentors came and helped these sort of 10 companies figure out all the different things that they needed to do to get their company off the ground. And so that was what kind of formed our, I'll call it city-based accelerator. And that began in Boulder back in 2006. Lo and behold, 10 years later, we operate in most major cities around the world in these sort of industry agnostic city-based programs. And, in many cases, we are the scaffolding of innovation in that particular, city. I think the story becomes quite interesting about 8 or 9 years ago, where we have corporate partners such as, Disney and Company. I'm trying to think of all there are quite a few, Nike, and the list kind of goes on, where they have particular needs. They want to work with companies that have a particular solution in their space. And so we work in conjunction with those organizations to identify companies that meet those specific needs. And we do it through the construct of a 3-month, very intensive program in which we help these companies define what even design what a proof of concept might look like, ultimately run a pilot, and hopefully a partnership afterwards. So there's a pretty defined process that we can get into a little bit later on, but that's sort of the basic premise of how we help companies: commercial opportunity, funding, and a lot of talent that we bring around the table to help them get off the ground.
Very cool. I love the use, especially with with CanBIM here, of scaffolding of innovation for cities. That's I think that's bang on. Now, Lisa, are you on bat? Can we hear you?
I think so. Can you hear me?
Wonderful. It is so nice to have you.
You know me, Chris. I just like to make an entrance. I want to make sure everyone knows to pay attention that I'm here.
Fantastic. You didn't need fireworks or anything, so this is good. This is good. So, well, Lisa, can you please just introduce yourself and your organization first off?
Yeah. So, my name is Lisa Cashmore, and I'm the Vice President of Start and Scale at Communitech. Communitech is a commercialization center. So, we run a variety of programs that are set out to help tech companies and tech-enabled companies start, grow, and succeed. So everything from early ideation stage companies right through to large enterprise. We help with things, everything from how to build your business and all the tools and resources you need, advisory work, growth coach support, through to educational programming through our academy and innovation type programming to help those sort of more traditional businesses with their innovation strategy.
Very good. And then just why don't you touch? We were only one question in, which is how does your group engage with industry? Is it like more grassroots? Is it you have a community or an organization that says this is what we're interested in? Help us find that. How do you engage?
Yeah, the newest way we're engaging, it's constantly changing, but the newest way is really this focus on the future of. So bringing together collaborations amongst like all the academic, government, industry, startup, really, cross-sector expertise to come together to solve problems for tomorrow's issues today. And so it's really about, I would say convening is one of our biggest strengths. So bringing together those players to really help address industry issues and have that conversation as a group. So it impacts all of those areas.
Fantastic. Now, I'm going to go a little off script with some of my questions here, because Sen actually said something that I saw all of your eyes glow when he said it. Hackathons are a part of what you do. And I'm a huge believer and lover of hackathons. In fact, I'm wearing my Van Hacks 2016 shirt right now, which is my hackathon that we put on for creating digital assets for nonprofits here in Vancouver. How much do hackathons play a role in creating new ideas or technologies? And have you found any that are successful through your organization yet. And Sen, I'm going to pick on you first because you're the one who said hackathon first.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a great, I guess a great platform for corporates to engage with the DMZ, just to kind of get a taste of what's happening in this like startup innovation space. And so what we would typically do is like on a very intensive weekend or 2 to 3 days, we'll bring the partners involved. We'll attract a bunch of students or young professionals or people that are interested in the space to come solve a specific challenge or problem statement that the partners have brought to the table. So the outcomes we've seen from that is, at least when working with partners, is like they start to see how they can embed their existing staff in these hackathons and get them to think differently, think outside the box from their existing culture they may have set up. And then also some of the ideas that come out of these hackathons are sometimes concepts or prototypes that they can actually implement in their organization. So we've seen some successful hackathons come out where they attempt to at least get the next meeting with the organization and see if they can implement it. But overall, it's really a great way to kind of inject some change in your thinking about how to solve a problem. And that's what we see it often with the hackathon.
Very cool. Very cool. Thank you. Lisa, does Communitech do anything with hackathons?
We do. It's sort of, the format can vary. I would say one of the most interesting ones we sort of wrapped up this year was the Leaders Prize. It was attached to our True North conference. And basically it was a $1 million prize for using AI to combat fake news. So it was a national competition that we issued that challenged Canadian thinkers and doers to solve the major societal or industry problems attached to fake news in this case. So that was kind of cool, just to, again, be able to have the partnerships and support to be able to, collaborate on launching such a large competition. And it was great to sort of, if you Google search Leaders Prize at True North, you'll find all kinds of information about the company that won and all of the different solutions that came forward. So some pretty exciting stuff.
Cool. You don't see too many $1 million prizes. That's like a round. So you're jumping pretty fast at that point. But Arash, you said you have a background as well with the education side. I know that universities are constantly doing them. Have you had any experience or any luck with products created through that?
Yeah, so one of the things that we're doing with U of T is that we're supporting their engineering design program. So our industry partners provide challenges to the students, and they have the whole term for 4 months. And they come together from all sorts of engineering backgrounds and then tackle those solutions. And they come up with creative ways. This is very new still, our involvement in it. But I've helped run the program in the past at U of T. So from the industry's perspective, I'm helping in connecting the industry partners with that talent that's at the universities. And I think I would like to, I know with Communitech and Waterloo, they obviously have a strong relationship, but I do want to encourage the industry to reach out to academia. Our students are thirsty, are hungry for some of these challenges, and with what kind of talent you can find them. So, and that's been basically most of our focus on the hackathon side of things. We're working with those university programs and supporting a student with real life examples of a real project that they can work on.
Very good, very good. And yeah, like I said, the university route is so darn important, especially if you really want to innovate. Ben, I'm assuming you must have some experience in this field?
Yeah, well, I think these are all different formats, and they all serve a different purpose, right? And so, like with Techstars, there's a Techstars Startup Weekend. As you're asking this question, I just pulled the site up, Startup Weekend, and just looked at the number of teams formed: 23,000, almost 200,000 community members in across 150 countries. Surprisingly, I mean, every time I look at this number, it's just shocking to me. And that's with our Techstars Startup Weekend, and we definitely have that format that helps, again, kind of build the early stage ecosystem. Again, this represents the future. So how do you foster the talent that is coming out of a lot of our education institutions in Toronto and Canada being one of those primary. When I think about talent, I mean, no shortage of talent in Toronto and Canada. When I think about the number of tech jobs created, probably second to none in North America. And so, products like that, formats like that for people to feel included, engaged, and be able to bring the broader community into solving particular problems. That is an amazing format for that particular purpose. Second, we also have launched a new Pathfinder product, which is a sort of lighter touch model for corporates to be able to engage with startups that fall both within, Techstars is a broader portfolio of over, I lose track of this number every time I say it, but over 2,000 companies that we have invested in. And also just, within a particular industry. And there's a curated set of roundtable sessions that we create by industry as well. And so that's another format that folks engage. Now, our Accelerator product, I'd say, is sort of our flagship product, which there's usually a corporation or a consortium of companies that get together around a very defined purpose and a very defined commercial need. And so that's where they're looking for, companies that are already seeing traction. Many of them come in with some degree of funding, teams of 2 to 20. There's already sort of an engineering team, a product and market revenue and traction, in many cases already in place. And so we really help to look those companies, curate and identify those companies against a particular set of needs, to identify those companies that are ripe for additional funding, post-program, Series A and beyond. And 3 that we believe that are ready to scale in that particular industry. And so, we place a very fine lens on those companies. We typically, and I think in any program we get, quite a few applications. We generally take the top 1%, which is roughly 10 companies per program. So it gives you the sense of, with 50 programs around the world, how many people are applying to a Techstars program in any given year. But that is our flagship product, and we believe that that one in its particular format has grown tremendously for good reason, because it drives a lot of innovation in any industry that we step into, and in this case, in real estate.
Perfect. Yeah, and I challenge anyone out there that is listening today, that if you are looking to solve a small problem, I do think these hackathons are a great way of at least trying to get a little idea, kind of cook something a little bit. I actually I have a podcast of Vancouver and Canadian entrepreneurs, and we asked the question, can you be successful creating a product out of a hackathon? And we actually interviewed Ian McKinnon, who I'm not sure if you know or don't know out here, but Ian's fantastic. And he created Later, which used to be called Latergram, which is a huge social media play. And that came out of a hackathon, which I think is interesting. So again, it shows that you can create innovation just by kind of flicking a light on. And, if you're looking to do that in any industries, I challenge you to do so. I think it's a great opportunity. Well, that's great. Arash, I'm going to start with you in this one, if you please. But when you're looking at a company's journey, or looking to bring them into incubation, are you looking for, like, what stage of that company's life are they in? Is it like pre-seed, series, seed, Series A? What's your sweet zone?
That's a great question, and it's something that's a bit of a nuance with us. We actually don't take companies in; we take ideas in. So we are very early stage, and we believe that there is a lot of support from this panel alone in the industry for startups to grow. What we want to do is we want to help create those companies. So we actually let ideas come in, and then we have a fantastic board of experts from within the industry who are going to validate, massage, and tailor those ideas. Sometimes they come in and join the co-founding team. Sometimes they become mentors to the program, and sometimes they group together to find startups. But basically, our niche is that we want ideas, not the startups. Ideas come in, and we help them. Once validated by the industry, we help turn them into companies. So the philosophy is, instead of developing software or tools or products and then trying to sell to our industry, we want to basically have the industry first approve and validate and support the idea, and then we go ahead and build it. So that's a big differentiator for us. So to answer quick answer to your question is that we take ideas and startups. In many ways, we're actually upstream from Techstars and Communitech and everybody else. So we want to be the formation for when it does come to Techstars or DMZ or Communitech or anywhere else. You now have a startup that's been validated by the industry, who's got pilot projects already, who's got everything it needs to succeed. So we position ourselves as upstream, and then we push that down, and our companies can, and they have in the past already, entered some other programs out there. So that's the space that we offer.
Well, then I'm super glad I asked you first. You're at the top of the funnel, so we'll go down the funnel a little bit then on the way. Ben, I'm assuming you guys are all over the place. I think all of you are all over the place. But what personally, are you looking for, like, the early, mid? Where in the life cycle is a sweet spot for you and your organization?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of companies come in and they haven't they've applied, they haven't had funding yet, they have a team in place. Obviously, they're fully committed, and the investor should never sort of be more committed than the founders themselves, right? And so the founders absolutely have to be 100% committed to the particular idea, project, company, in most cases that they're founding. And so generally we seek, there's such a vast array of companies that apply. We, first and foremost, look at the team, right? And so, like, do they have sort of the right, and we can assess the team and talk about the team for quite some time on this panel, but do they have, I think it comes down to, do we have the belief that they can execute against the idea and vision that they have communicated, and can they articulate that vision very, very clearly? And so the team is first and foremost. We also dig in very closely to the product, and we generally look for a product to be in place. And second and third, we obviously look at commercial traction. I think it varies by industry. I think in particular in real estate, because of the nature of real estate, and many sort of organizations are looking for some level of validation, right? So has their product sort of hit the market? Do they have some level of validation? Do they have existing customers? And so there are certainly things that we look at from the perspective of traction. But I want to sort of reiterate that, one of the fundamental purposes of the accelerator, I think, given where we kind of play in the industry, and when you even just take into context what's happened in the industry over the last 7 years, right? If you look back 5 to 7 years within real estate, probably a couple of dozen, if not a couple hundred companies. If you look today in a quick snapshot, there is close to 7,000 companies. So what that tells you is that this is an emerging sector. Most companies are at the earlier stages. And so that's where I'd say, if we look forward over the next few years, that's where the opportunity is. There's a lot of emerging opportunities. And the challenge becomes being able to kind of understand, which companies are solving a real particular need. And so that's what we dig into quite a bit, which is, is there even if we do sort of work with this company and help them, is there a market need, and is there going to be adoption within the industry to take in solutions like this, and how many other competitors are there, and how many iterations are there of the sort of similar product, right? So the stage in which we look at then varies, and it varies a bit, but generally there's a product, there's some revenue that's obtained by the company, and some early validation, some early funding. We also help with early funding even prior to coming into our program in some cases, because we want to see a team in place that is able to take advantage of the basically the opportunity that we bring to scale in many countries around the world. And in some cases that ends up being a theme, which is international expansion through the course of a narrowly defined program. We have access to that, whether it be sort of the footprint and distribution in about 60 countries around the world. So it ends up being a core theme in many cases.
Good. And Sen, how about you? Is there a sweet spot in the terms of companies when they enroll in your programs, or is it all over the place as well?
We have like distinct programs, but I think if we were to break it apart, it's like we have pre-product market fit companies and companies that are close to achieving product market fit. And so we have founders that are 1 to 3 people teams that are like still trying to figure out who their customers are, trying to figure out their market opportunity, and still build up their product. And then we have companies that have kind of figured that piece out, and how do we help them scale? Similar to like Techstars, Communitech. We're servicing companies at different stages, but really, we're going back to like looking at the team, do they have the capacity and the ability to build this company and support the gaps in their company. So we kind of look at the 2 stages, it's the 2 programs distinctly in terms of an incubator and accelerator and how we support them. But it's very customized to kind of the needs of the company.
Very interesting. Lisa, can you share your experience?
Chris, we've lost your microphone, I think. It sounds like you've covered it up. While we wait for him, I'm going to roll and assume he asked me if I have anything different to contribute.
That's a fair assumption. Let's just continue on.
I would say the sweet spot for Communitech is post-validation and onwards, although we do certainly have opportunities to engage with Communitech at the ideation stage. We have things like early stage peer groups, and it's almost like if you think of our funnel as wide at the top and smaller at the bottom when it comes to tech startups in particular. At the top of the funnel is this many to one type offering, right? Come to peer groups, come to networking events, engage in learning opportunities that are workshop type things, but there's many people learning from one provider. And then as the funnel goes down, as a company moves further along the journey, the one-on-one support gets to be more what the focus is. So right now, high potential startups and scale-ups can engage with us in what we're calling an intensive track. And that's really like a double down of our resources. So that's where we'll put a team of growth coaches working with them, help them identify what problems and gaps they have, and then we launch the resources that they need to move themselves from point A to point B. So like there's a full development of a growth plan, and it's really in-depth work with not only the CEO, but their entire leadership team. That kind of work we can't do with everybody. I mean, it's very resource intensive. So it kind of like, much like Sen said, there's programs where there's sweet spots for certain activities. So our Fierce Founders Bootcamp, for example, the sweet spot for that is ideation companies. This is about recruiting as many women-led companies as possible into our funnel so that we can really try and strengthen and encourage the number of women-led companies we have and give them the supports they need in order to move them further down the funnel so they can then engage in our programming like our Fierce Founders Intensive Track, which provides $50,000 in matching funds and a full growth plan and lots of support. But that's targeted at scale-up companies. But if you just create a program for scale-ups and you never do anything to build the funnel, in our opinion, you won't have it. It's particularly when it comes to things like female founders or Black founders or underrepresented groups that need that extra support in order to move their business forward. So it really does depend. I did see in the Q&A a question from Julia who said, what's the most important thing to look out for when deciding to invest time in working with a startup? Mm-hmm. For us, it might be different than with Techstars, for example, where they're making a cash investment. But for us, a lot of it is the amount of engagement they're willing to put in. So are they coachable? Are they going to heed the advice you share? Because there's nothing more frustrating than spending a ton of time and effort with a founder who isn't really interested in receiving that kind of support. So I would say for us, beyond the fact of like, is there good market potential? Do they, are they really engaging in their company? I feel like coachability is one of those sort of less tangible things that really helps us determine how much time we want to spend.
Well, fantastic. Thank you, Lisa. You jumped right over to the other one, but save me some time from asking you. Can you hear me better now that I've lost my headphones?
All better.
That's what happens when you go to work too early in the morning. Well, you know what? Why don't we continue down that track? And Ben, I'll move to you next. I'm trying to juggle around here as much as I can. I mean, how do they word that? What's the most important thing you look out for when deciding to invest time in working with a startup?
Yeah, it certainly doesn't come down to one thing, and so there's the founder and there's the founding group, and then there's the team, and then there's the team dynamic, right? And it's how they kind of pull all of that together. And so like if we start with just like the founding CEO or team, what I often kind of look for is like the very clear articulation around the problem that they're solving and how deeply they can kind of think about that problem. When I think back to even just like early days, and I didn't mention this at the top, but like, as part of the leadership team at Ritual, we grew that company. And one thing that attracted me to even just that company was Ray. And so when we think about his vision for that company, how sort of laser focused it was, and his ability to kind of articulate that in a way where, hey, we're solving this unlike anyone else out there in the market. And sort of they're always able to kind of share that secret with you, which is here's what I'm going to share with everyone, but here's the thing that I'm not telling everyone, right? And so there's just like this deeper level of understanding that they have around that particular problem that they're tackling. That type of being laser focused on solving that one particular problem better than anyone else is one crucial element that we look for in the CEO founder. And there's the team that they pull together, and we kind of think about, is this a sole founder? In some cases, there's certainly risk and challenges in that. just getting a startup off the ground is extraordinarily difficult, right? So when we think about, is the sort of composite of the team complementary? Do they have the sort of right ingredients in place and the right folks in place to support them? That's so crucial early days in a company, because there's so many things to do, and it's also just how multifaceted they are, wearing multiple different hats, and how the level of conviction is often something that we look at as well. And that's a hard thing to gauge, but it takes time. And I think, this is the one thing that I think as a profile, all the sort of managing directors within Techstars generally come from a very entrepreneurial background. So having gone through it, knowing what you're about to go in through, how insane it's about to become is one of those things that, if they haven't found a startup to date, and this is their first rodeo show, do they know what they're about to step into? And so that's a crucial element, because the level of determination that you need to be able to take a company from, and again, when we think about it from an investment perspective, these are companies that we're hoping will grow and scale over time, right? So to be able to take it from A to D to hopefully an IPO and exit, it is a long journey, and it is a very, very rocky journey. There are very few companies out there that grow and just continue to kind of scale without a lot of bumps along the road. So how will they react in the face of those challenges? And that takes time, right? And so we often talk about sort of it's the lines, not the dots. And so we don't make sort of quick, hazardous sort of hey, here, two meetings later, here's sort of a quick investment. We really try to get to know the founders and the founding team, understand how we anticipate they will think and react to particular situations down the road. And so it is a pattern that we kind of look for over time when we assess the founding team and the company.
Very nice, very nice. One thing that I've always found funny with especially young entrepreneurs is they think if they get investment, everything's finished at that point. Where that's actually, most of them don't even need the money. Like, they think they need the money. They think that's what success is. It drives me nuts, to be honest. And that's why I think I actually really like Julia's question. Sen, how about, can you touch on that? Investing time. That's actually the hardest thing for you guys, because that's harder to scale. How do you, what's the most important thing for you to look out for when you decide to invest time when working with a startup then?
Yeah, Ben covered a lot of the great points that we look at. And if you kind of listen to him more and more, it's not really, we do look at the data and metrics, but at this stage of the company, it's usually a founder that has all these uncertainties about building a business, all these unknowns that they have to tackle. So we really want to understand the founder's experience and, what is their why? Like, why do they wake up every day to start this company? And like that one keyword that Ben says, like conviction, right? Mm-hmm. Like, do they have ultimate conviction? Are they willing to bet on themselves to say that they see where the puck is going and this is the opportunity to chase? And so we spend a lot of time working with the founders. And I think we made a mistake. I remember early days, and like, I think it was actually when I was at Communitech running the Rev Accelerator program. Like, I remember there's a team, we said, we're going to bring this company in, super exciting. We were talking about we could do this, we could do that. And then quickly over time, they're great founders, but they didn't have the same ambition level as the Communitech team on where they wanted to take the company. Mm-hmm. So that was a big lesson learned for me, is like, it's not about what you, as an organization, when we're working with founders, where does the founder want to take this organization? And are you willing to go? And that was a really key lesson for us. And so really, when you think about it, it always comes down to the founder, their resilience, their conviction, and do they have what it takes to take the company to the next level, and really understanding what they do know and what they don't know.
Very nice. Well, thank you for sharing. Now, Arash, because I think you're more idea over, person in terms of the startup. Can I ask, when you're looking, do you look at saying, hey, we'll put this much time into this idea or this much money into this idea? What's the most important for you? Is it the money? Is it the time? How do you focus that?
It's actually very interesting hearing all these comments, because we are a completely different approach. Mm-hmm. First of all, our entrepreneurs are average age, maybe twice everything else. So we are looking for 20, 30-year-old veterans of the industry who've been working this for a long time, and they want to change it from within, right? So you have all these startups that come to our industry anyway from outside, and it's good to have a different perspective and have a fresh eye. But there is this other opportunity from within this particular industry to help the people from within to actually solve their own problems, and in partnership actually, with some younger generations and whatnot. So when we're looking at projects and startups, we're looking at industry validation. That's first and foremost. Is the problem that you're trying to solve, is it real or not? And if the problem is real, is the industry ready to change or not? Because I used to live in the R&D world. From an R&D perspective, we can build buildings automated with robots, no problem. When you go to a construction site, you see piles of paper. This is the Ontario building code, 700 pages right here. This industry is a long way to go to accommodate the research that we're doing at our universities now. So our point is basically, yes, there is a problem, but is the industry willing to change? So what happened with COVID, and that's basically what fast-tracked a lot of our operation, was that we've been banging at this door for a long time. But when COVID hit, there was a big realization in our sector that, you know what, maybe digitization is the way to go. So the unfortunate thing in construction, the latest productivity improvement goes back to the Industrial Revolution. Every other industry has done very well since then in terms of productivity. Construction, flat. So we think that we're on the verge of the next digital evolution in our industry. And that's what we're basically setting shop up for. And we're basically asking the industry experts to come to us. And we want to focus on the ideas that there is immediate validation from the industry saying that, yes, we're willing to adopt it. And only if they say that, we're willing to create the product. So in our board of experts, we have people from Colliers, we have people from 3 levels of government already. We have the developers, building officials. We're pulling all those people together so that when an idea comes in, we can have that instant validation as to yes or no. And if yes, are you willing to commit sites to it? Are you willing to commit resources to it? And what are you willing to do to make this happen? And so we assemble that first. And so in many ways, when you're looking at founders, we're actually looking to, we go out and find the founders. If the idea is solid, if there's demand for it, we are looking right now for founders to come in to work on ideas that industry has already said, put their hands up. Yes, you want to do this, we're willing to support it. So it's an interesting position that we're in right now, which is a little different than some other organizations maybe.
Well, that's interesting. I mean, do you have multiple entrepreneurs and residents who are waiting at bat to say, "Hey, I'm an expert in this. I'm an expert in that." Do you have something for me to go, or is that you look for the people when you know?
It's getting there. Again, the idea was that we put this board together, and then we put a call for proposals out, and say, "Come, bring your ideas." What happened was we started putting the board together. And they have so many ideas themselves that for the next year or so, we're actually not taking any more ideas from outside. It's basically people who are coming to our board who are willing to help others with their ideas and who are going to be pitching their own ideas. So it's a bit of a different format than you would.
Sure.
But for us, a big problem has been a scale. How do we scale to respond to this demand? Because there is a lot of demands in this particular industry, and they want everything yesterday. Just because when COVID hit, it's changing a whole lot in this particular sector of the industry.
For sure. That's interesting. Well, I'm gonna say tomorrow I'm excited. 2:30 Apple Store. I get to pick my iPhone 12. Okay, 5G, which we're actually playing. My kids are actually playing hockey games, which I think we're the only people in all of Canada playing games. But that actually means one parent is in there filming it on Twitch, and all the parents are watching outside. So this 5G thing excites me. Okay. But it also IoT excites me, and I think 5G is going to start waking IoT up. And I think IoT is going to be huge in build tech, property tech. Okay, if it hasn't already been, it's gonna be lit on fire. Ben, I'm going to start with you. Are there any places or sweet spots in IoT, or even companies that are in your portfolio right now that you're excited about in the IoT side of things?
Yeah, well, I mean, first in the short term, I think about sort of the deployment of 5G. So certainly the spectrum is available, but is the core infrastructure there across all buildings, and what sort of percentage of buildings, Class A, Class B, et cetera? Mm-hmm. I think, longer term, it is a very interesting opportunity for those that fall within the intersection of BIM and sort of IoT. So think about sort of your digital twin solutions, right, which will benefit from this in the longer term, given what they're trying to do, which is essentially replicate and create a digital asset of a particular built environment. And so, I actually think there's someone who's presenting as a part of an earlier panel. Met the group at Willow out of Australia, and there's also, of course, Thoughtware, which is homegrown Canadian-based. So there are companies like that I think will benefit from this environment in the longer term. In the short term, I got to think, isn't the primary goal at the moment, how do we get people back into the office safely, right? And so that's the primary objective, I think, for many at the moment. And so, there's some long-term secular trends that will continue to grow over time, but there's these sort of immediate need. And there's a bit of a trade-off, right? In some cases where you want to be able to kind of conserve on energy through HVAC solutions, et cetera, yet you need many of those solutions on sort of quite permanently, just to be able to provide a safe environment. So I go back to what are some near-term solutions that can help everyone go back to the office safely? Yes, there's a number of solutions. And so this is not a situation where, the rising tide kind of raises all ships, right? And so there are going to be some winners and losers within, companies that had a particular solution. Those that have been successful are going to be those that are able to kind of adapt their solution to the current environment. Within our portfolio, I just mentioned, there's one company that is called Fast Office, Canadian-based, that retrofits your office. It takes a sort of 2D sort of rendering, automatically converts into the 3D live environment, and you're able to do a quick walkthrough. It creates a heat map. You can safe and socially distance within that sort of heat map, and it renders that environment immediately. You can make sort of modification adjustments. You can take industrial grade, hospital grade products and plug it in, and it immediately calculate, hey, is this a safe environment for you to step into, accounting for safe and social distancing? Now, the subsequent thing is how do you monitor whether any of these plans are successful in real time as people are actually stepping into the office? And we have a solution called basking automation for that, which taps into your existing infrastructure, your Wi-Fi infrastructure, and is able to see, where people are moving and creates a heat map in real time. So you're able to monitor and contact trace individuals as they go from one building to another, or even just ensure that you're doing some proper contact tracing and measurement. There's a number of these solutions, right, that I think are in the last 6 months just skyrocketed in a ton of adoption, unfortunately, in light of the current environment. But I think that's got to be a primary focus for the industry right now. And it doesn't matter where you kind of sit in the value chain. Everyone is focused on this at the moment. Air quality, of course, really, really important to be able to account for air quality. There's a number of solutions that I think that are addressing this. And I think the list can go on. And there's certainly a number of solutions that we're looking at, both in our existing portfolio that are transitioning their products to be able to address a particular need, and two, just new companies that are arising as a course of what we're facing today collectively. If we take a step back, some solutions were applicable to a portion of any real estate built environment portfolio previously. In today, given the sort of transition, 100% of the market is addressable in particular cases. Every real estate manager, asset property manager needs to be able to have solutions. And I think technology, uniquely for the first time, can play a very pivotal role in this transition, whether it be sort of a back to office or rethinking what even the definition of an office should be. How do you use that current environment? Maybe it's not even going back to the office, and there are solutions that we've seen that provide a bit more of a sort of a hub and spoke model, and be able to kind of, it'd be great if I could go and book a private office down the street right now. Many of us don't have the luxury of living in, sort of homes with, the basement, separate rooms, et cetera, especially when we think about the core CBD, right? So I'd say, for the first time, there's a tremendous amount of opportunity. I'd suspect that, the secular growth that we've seen in PropTech over the last 5 years will continue in some respects well into 2021 and beyond.
Well, very good. Thank you, Ben. Sen, I'm going to be picking on you next. Kind of the same vein of this, because 5G or not 5G, SaaS or anything. Let's get some people's ideas percolating here. What is it that either in your portfolio, maybe speak about a company or two that that is in your portfolio, or even ones that you're excited about in the space right now of property tech or build tech?
No, it's a good question. I mean, I think when you were thinking about IoT, a company that I worked with actually in my previous life in Waterloo again, who Lisa is probably very familiar with, Alert Labs. They're a company that we brought to the accelerator. Phenomenal founders, Ruth and George. They built basically this solution where it's a water and HVAC sensors that help monitor and analyze property data. So it's really a solution to minimize water damage, floods that happen in properties. And so the founders, I think a year and a half ago, got acquired by a Florida-based company called Watsco. It's a big HVAC company there. And so I think they've continued to work with them and to grow that opportunity. So you see interesting solutions like that in the marketplace. I think this group would have also met a company that we work really closely with in the DMZs. It's called Ratio City. The founder is Monica, and I think she's presenting today as well. Interestingly enough, she's also went through Communitech's programming, also DMZ's programming. I know you'll start to see that a lot of the companies have I know companies that we worked with that went through Techstars and Communitech. So the ecosystem is really tight. We offer a lot of overlapping services, but we have our distinct, I guess, specialty in that how we can support and continue to grow these companies. And Ratio City is cool because they've built a software for to help make better data-driven decisions for land acquisition. So a lot of really cool tools for builders or developers to use. And so definitely a company I would consider watching. I'm going to be hard on Ben because Ben kind of passed on Ratio City when we were at Texas, but his colleague ended up investing in them, which is kind of cool still. So that's kind of some of the two companies that come top of mind.
Wonderful. Well, I love how everyone's, jumping in the same pool and the water splashing on all of you. So I think that's just fantastic. Well, you know what, Lisa, why don't I ask same question? What is in your portfolio right now do you find really interesting, either company or technology or both?
Yeah, so I'll stick with the IoT lens because there's honestly, it's like picking your favorite child. You really can't.
I have one.
There's too many. There's too many. But if I think about IoT and sort of where I'm, a couple that I'm thinking are looking good right now, 11X has caught my attention. They do digital transformations for cities, campuses, commercial real estate. Myovision, I would say, is also doing really well. They're in smart city solutions. So again, helping improve mobility and livability in cities of all sizes. And I like what ThoughtWire is up to. They're a Toronto-based company. They're developing digital models called digital twins of hospitals and buildings to help them analyze, test, and implement solutions to make them run more efficiently and better. So those are three off the top of my head. But I did want to just jump in on what Sen said about the companies kind of utilizing all of our services. And I think that's a really beautiful thing to note. That's very Canadian in nature. So I led the national and the international outreach of Communitech for a long time, and it was something as I traveled around other ecosystems I didn't see the way we see it here in Canada. And there is lots of opportunity for companies to take advantage of many of our programs. So Sen and I refer companies back and forth all the time. A number of our companies have participated in Techstars. And in fact, both Communitech, DMZ, and Techstars are all members of the Google for Startups programming. So we're often engaged in, creating best practices together and support. And what Arash talked about, all the building up those ideation stage companies. I mean, that's an incredible funnel for the rest of us where, he's working really hard to make sure that companies are tackling problems that have a big, have a big market opportunity instead of us trying to take companies that have already progressed and helping them try and turn into $100 million companies. He's making sure they have the $100 million opportunity first and then helping them build. So I think it's a pretty unique situation, in my opinion, in Canada, the way that we all collaborate to support the companies. I am happy when one of my companies would get into Techstars. I'm thrilled when one of them tells me they're also part of DMZ. And I'd love Arash to start sending me all of his companies to help build up my funnel. So I think it's great. This is such an awesome opportunity to connect and know that we all have the backs of these companies to help them move forward.
I love that. I honestly just love that because we always say I've got my meetup group for iOS. It's called Vancouver iOS Developers Industry Institute, and what we always say is that we're all competing for American money. together, we're just going to get better, and we want the community to get better. But at the end of the day, let's just say we're not competing for the Canadian ones, we're competing for the American ones, because that way we all improve to be well known as a powerhouse. And again, Toronto, the Ontario, the Western Ontario, Waterloo region, we all know what a powerhouse that is. Well, we're getting low on time, but Arash, what can I ask you? Again, I think it's a different way, the way you're up the funnel or down the funnel, pardon me. But is there any technologies right now that you're really excited about, especially maybe in the IoT space?
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned, first of all, thanks, Elisa and everybody else. I want to just point out that we are also very excited about what's happening within our local economy here in terms of, I don't see it as overlap, very complementary. And we are positioning ourselves to be supplying the startups out to other programs. And we're just adding that industry support behind it. So make sure that the startups that come to you actually have done the market research, they have the backup that they need, and then you can help them grow. You can help them scale. So I see that very complementary. In terms of what's coming down the pipe, you touched on 5G, and I think 5G will make the construction industry move forward a lot faster than it did in the past. We have building information modeling. We have GIS applications that need that kind of support to be on site. So in the past, we've tried with building information modeling and augmented and virtual reality on site, and bandwidth was always an issue. So I can't wait to get the 5G network. We're actually partnering with a few folks and testing on a 5G testbed that's coming up, some of our platform, but we're very excited about it. And I think if anybody has any interest in the 5G side of things, look into construction and look into all the opportunities that's going to come up in that sector, because that's where I think it's going to have a major impact. But I know you're up on time, so you're short on time, so I'll wrap it up there.
Well, fantastic. Well, you know what? I'm just going to ask one quick question to each of you. I'm going to start with you, Lisa. Give me a percentage, okay? 50-50, 60-40, whatever. People, founders versus idea. What's the most important?
We need 100-100.
We're doing with that math then.
I mean, it's such an important mix. And you have a really great idea and a terrible founder. I mean, you'll get started, but you'll struggle for sure. Can you have a really great founder and a terrible idea? Yes, as long as you're open to pivoting and
exactly
moving along. So, I mean, I would say at the early stage, being a strong founder, like a good entrepreneur, is more important. You can always get a new idea.
Very good, very good. Okay, Sen, we got less time. Give me the numbers. What do you feel?
100% on the founder, and then everything else comes after.
Love that. Ben? You're on mute, Ben.
This is an easy one for me, given the stage that we operate in. It's early stage, right? So 100% founder, very, very clearly. We've even had companies that have come in and pivoted within the program, right? And so, like when you consider situations like that, immediately it's a no-brainer that you need to bet on the founder.
Very good. And Arash, you're an idea company or organization, founder or product?
I think, honestly, it's a lot of burden to put on people to have a good idea and also be a good founder. So that's why we match them together. So if you're a good entrepreneur, you have that mindset and you have that itching inside you, or if you have a good idea, we can match them together. Because it's not always that you can find both in the same person, and that's why we like to put people together that have an idea and have the heart for it.
Fantastic. Well, I think that puts us at the 1 o'clock hour, the 4 o'clock hour for you. I really want to thank, Arash, Ben, Sen, Lisa. Wonderful panel. You guys, very, very, very enlightening. And, I hope to continue learning from all of you as time progresses.
Thanks very much, Chris.
Okay. Cheers, all.